City of Mount Vernon Council meeting. We are going back in time and not using our tablets, or at least not everyone up here. So we do have paper copies in front of us, so we might be a little bit slower, but otherwise, not aware of any changes to the agenda we have in front of us.
For approval?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is communication. Is there anybody that would like to address the council? If so, please come forward, name and address, please.
Edward Schultz, 419 8th Street Northwest. This is for the mayor. I came into one of the meetings in March, and you had your pro tem sitting in your place, with Marty at the time. And I asked him for kind of a proclamation for March 15th for American Legion's birthday. It's 100 years.
Sure.
And he said, yeah, he's going to pass it on. And so I just wanted to bring it back up and make sure we got maybe a proclamation from the mayor for 15th through the 17th of March is the birthday, 100 years of American Legion.
Yeah. Thank you. Is
And,
that something you have that you can share with us in terms of, is there something that needs to be read?
no, it's just, I know some mayors do a proclamation.
Is there a template?
Yeah, something.
Okay, it's like, you know,
I just want to make sure we handle it
maybe you can fire.
correctly.
That's all.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Yes?
Go ahead, Lance, go ahead. Good evening. So, Lance Dixon, I own the building 118 First Street, 114 First Street. So we had a running toilet in the gym in the alley. And there's 2 bathrooms in there, one they didn't really use. I don't know if somebody went in there and flushed it in the September, but the billing is in arrears, as you guys know. So all told, by the time we got it fixed, we're gonna be $3,000 higher than what we normally pay. So even with the 25% discount that's there, you know, you're looking at $2,250. So just wanted to bring that to your attention and see if there was anything we could do on that. Seems like a lot for a running toilet, but anyway.
Well, something that we'll look into, or Chris, I don't think you have anything to share right now, or?
So you've adopted the 25%, and then we will work with property owners to pay their bill back over, say, a year's period of time. I did speak with Mr. Dixon and talk to him about coming here. And, you know, as I stated, it's always one thing for staff to bring it in front of you, and others for citizens too. You know, you did adopt a 25% discount, up to 25% discount. It's been used twice since you had adopted it. As a council, you can always consider more. I always encourage property owners to come in and ask that question and allow you to think about it, though, because if you don't know that things like this exist, it's hard for you to have that consideration when you're talking about an ordinance. You can always talk about the ordinance again, if you would like. So I would say over the next couple of weeks, maybe the first of the year, if I just know that if somebody wants to add it to a discussion item and have further discussion, then you can have it on the council agenda and talk about the merits of 25% or something else. In the meantime, obviously, we can do what we did with a previous water bill and just kind of freeze that portion of it. Just continue to make payments on the normal water bill, and we'll freeze that portion until a decision's actually made. And I told Mr. Dixon this too. It's a catch-22 for staff, because watching the budget, we pay to process both ends, and so it's still coming in and going through the meter and stuff like that. So, like I said, over the course of the next few weeks, we don't have another meeting until January 7th after this. So give you an opportunity, but like I said, we have before in the past frozen a bill and just kind of held on to it till this was figured out, so.
Okay.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Mr. Appreciate it. Anybody else? I'd like to address the council. Seeing no one, we will move on to the consent agenda, approval of council minutes from the December 3rd, 2018 council meeting.
Move approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is ordinance 11-15-2018A, vacating and selling the north-south 16-foot alley right-of-way adjacent to 906 and 824 Summit Avenue, southwest Mount Vernon, Iowa. This is the third and final reading. I know we've had some dialogue in the past week, so I'll let Chris fill that in for staff, or for council.
Since the last meeting, we have had two lines of communication come to city staff. One from the Tyndall Law Office on behalf of their client Paul Devens. My staff has met with Mr. Devens. When my staff met with Mr. Devens, originally it kind of indicated that he would be interested in his half, which is normal. Typically we would split the alley in half and offer both sides. About 2 days later, I believe, is when we received word from the attorney that Mr. Devens would be objecting to the alley vacation altogether. The concern that was indicated to me through the attorney was that Paul may buy the house from the estate and does not want to potentially give away an access to the rear of this property. Today, I received an email communication from Thomas Simon. I believe you all received that as well. Realistically, we don't put conditions like that on an alley vacation. We'll look at the merits of the vacation. As staff, our jobs are to deal with those nuisance type situations regardless. So, and I know there's members in the audience that would like to speak. I did talk to the city attorney. I'll probably wait to weigh your options until after they have spoken, if that is okay.
Yep. Good. So please, I invite, if there's anyone that would like to speak on this item.
I'm Paul Devens.
Paul, sir?
Yeah.
Go ahead and come forward, Mr. Edmund. We'll get you next.
Oh, okay. Thomas Simon, I sent the letter
Yep.
to everyone, and here's a concern, and I've reached out to Paul before. Here's an abandoned property. The community needs to have neighborhoods where the neighbors talk to each other and work with each other and don't abandon the property or don't not respond to inquiries as to what is going to happen with that property. No maintenance on the property for 10 years. It's in terrible disrepair. I'm one of the neighbors, Sutherland's our neighbor. We have a lot invested in our property and we keep our property up. He doesn't even shovel the snow. We had to approach the city to have his lawn mowed. There is a mattress that is in the front porch as a haphazard repair for the screen of the porch. It's been there for years. This is a property that is not a residence. Now, if he wants to purchase something that will affect adjoining property, we want to request that that property be maintained properly with the same care that his neighbors are maintaining our property. We also really want to have him respond to our request to tell us what he wants to do with that property. Now imagine if it was your neighbor and you've got a lot of invested in your house. You pay your taxes, have for 20-some years. And the property next door, now it might be a death in the family, and that's totally understandable. But the people who now own the property, we would want to have them have some interaction with the neighbors to give us an insight into, are they going to maintain that property the way that we are? Are they going to try to sell the property? So therefore, with the ordinance the way it's worded right now, there is absolutely nothing that would protect the adjacent property owners, nor is there anything that would give us the incentive to invest in the cost of buying the vacated property without having the assurance that the property next door to where we are going to have to purchase that vacant area is going to be a residence in accordance with the ordinance that right now is in place for residential property in that neighborhood. Now, this was once part of the historical neighborhood in Mount Vernon. Our home is 104 years old. Sutherland's home's the same. We have invested to make sure that our properties are well maintained and are an asset in the community. All I want is if there is an ordinance passed that is going to affect our property, that there be conditions that require that whoever has the property that wishes to purchase that vacant area be a resident, not an absentee owner, and have their property maintained according to the way the other neighbors do. So thank you. Appreciate it if you would really hear it and think of yourself. And think of what would happen if you had a neighbor who just wasn't taking care of the property. And now they want to have additional purchase of property that adjoins it that would affect our property. You'd want to have some consideration built into that ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir? Name and address, please.
My name is Paul Evans. I currently am at P.O. Box 473 in Riverside, Iowa. And so I'm the administrator for my mother Solvita's estate, and the property 824 is part of my estate. I mean, I appreciate some of the things that Tom says. The house does need some work. I think his description of it is greatly exaggerated. It's not a crumbling wreck. It does need some cosmetic attention, and so I'm tending to that. Up until this summer, my sister had been residing in that house, and there's been some issues within our family, and so that basically, when she was residing in that house, it was off limits to my mother and myself. I don't need to go into all kinds of details about that, but so that's why it's been a little bit hands-off that way. Again, I would be happy to go there with people if you want to look at it. It's not really all that bad. But now, as of this summer, I have control of the house. I am visiting it regularly. Everything's functioning and it's fine. I'm evaluating my options in terms of, do I want to sell it as is? Do I want to repair it myself and then sell it? Possibly buy it myself? I don't know. So these kinds of issues are ongoing with me. As far as my objection to vacating the alley, so I went and did some measurements and looked at where the property lines fall, and the topography of my property on the side facing the alley to the west of it is such that if I lose the right-of-way of that alley, then I basically have no access into the side or the back of the property, which currently does not have a garage. And Summit Avenue is a hill. In the wintertime, it's brutal there when the snow is down, and there's nowhere else to move a car to. There's no parking on College Boulevard, 10th Avenue, anything like that. So whether I buy it or somebody else buys it, I think the availability and access to have off-street parking and a garage out back is very important. And if that is lost, then I think I lose a good chunk of the value of the property. So that's the fundamental concern with the alley vacating. Is there anything you...
One clarifying question.
Yeah,
I know we're
please.
talking about the north-south alley, but
Yes.
isn't there, isn't there kind of an east-west alley back there? Isn't there access?
Yeah,
I don't
there's
know the depth of the
I have a
lot,
map
but-
I can show you. There's a complex alley system. So the street basically, Summit Avenue is an east-west that's straight.
Right,
And then you have a semicircular College Boulevard below it.
but
You have a corresponding alley system inside.
Yeah, behind that.
Then you have the one that goes north-south between 906 and 824, and then one that goes all the way toward basically the commons at Cornell.
Right.
But those are basically grown into timber now. I mean, they're not, it's not a realistic access.
It's not, ac-
It's not, none of those are a realistic access for vehicles.
even if it was cleared, it still wouldn't give you access from the south to the lower level of your house for parking, for a garage.
I mean, conceptually, the right-of-ways are there, but it's a long pathway.
It's a hike to that property there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have a diagram I'd be happy to share. But I don't think any of the other alleyway structure that's built into that block is a practical use for, it doesn't replace the one that is right adjacent to the property. And that's right off the street and right behind the house, right there.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Devens? No? Thank you, sir.
okay, thank you.
Please.
I'm Gretchen Sutherland. I think two facts. Do you want me to go to the mic?
That way we can hear it. Thank you.
One fact is that Paul Devens doesn't own the property, and we don't know at what point the estate will be settled and Paul will buy the property that he's talking about. It's been a couple of years, more than that we have noticed the deterioration of things. The second thing is that there is, what we're talking about is Park Avenue, which is a street, a platted street that runs between our properties, then along the back of the Summit Avenue properties, and comes out over by Cornell College and the Commons. Next to that is an alleyway that's different from Park Avenue. So we're not talking about that alley that Tom is referencing. There is an alleyway there that is not Park Avenue. And that alleyway gives access to the houses that are on the west of our the east of our property, so that they can come in and access the garage if they have a garage at the back of their property. We're not vacating, or not, the city is not even considering vacating that alley. The city is considering now today, and has done for 2 other meetings, vacating Park Avenue, which is not an avenue, which is not an alley. It's actually a 16-foot platted street that runs along the properties. The third thing that I'd like to say is that Paul has looked and measured Park Avenue. There's a major hackberry tree and a major walnut tree, which is on his half. If it was divided, it's on his half of Park Avenue. These 2 major old trees, like 50 or 70-year-old trees. And they are going to require very shortly either trimming or removal, or they're going to fall on somebody. And so whoever owns this alley, whether it's the city or the Sutherlands or whoever, is going to have to maintain and own those trees. You know, they've just been allowed to grow over all these years. We believe, my husband and I, that if the Park Avenue is divided, and in fact the council agrees to split it and sell it eventually, if Paul does then own it, that we, at our stage in life, cannot depend upon Mr. Devens to maintain that property and take care of the trees and, you know, the trimming of them, the removal of them if that's required, thousands of dollars probably, since we maintain a property with full-grown trees all over it. And so our consideration lately has been, since we knew that maybe Paul was going to, in whatever future this is going to take place as it goes on, that we would not continue to be interested in making the investment in purchasing Park Avenue from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chris, what do you have from the attorney?
So in short, the past practice has been to split the property when two people are interested in splitting the vacated portions. There is no law that requires that. It's just been past practice. Typically, staff would probably recommend not vacating an alley if somebody stepped forward and said they were had need of an alley usage. Usually that's one of the things that we require before we bring an application forward. In this instance, the story's kind of changed for staff kind of throughout this process. It's been a semi-difficult one to follow. The options that you have are, one, not vacate the alley. So you can vote this ordinance down. They can always bring an alley vacation petition forward again. But you currently have one adjacent property owner that's requesting to vacate and buy, and another that is requesting that you don't vacate. I would say this, I think it's a little bit of a misnomer, regardless if it's an alley right away or a street right away, that just because it's platted in there that you get to use it. So it's unapproved at this point, and it does not mean that you can necessarily utilize it. If the city needed to utilize it, they could come in and upgrade. For anybody to want to utilize that as a driveway or access to their property, the alley would have to be upgraded at the expense of the property owners around, adjacent to this. So it's not any different than if we were to have a subdivision plat and the developers are out there putting the streets in. They're required to put the infrastructure in, and then we maintain it after that. So like I said, I want everybody to understand that just because it's platted does not necessarily mean it's usable. There is 2 access points that still would match or meet up with a kind of odd-shaped oval in the center. I don't really know that either one of those are considered usable. There are a lot of trees, obviously, and even in this instance, the 2 trees that you're referencing we're not in the habit of taking down old growth trees unless they're diseased and or dying. So even the improvements for an alley at that point, somebody would have to show substantial need for that. So your options are basically, you can move forward with the 3rd reading. We could offer it to both halves, both property owners, and state a period of time for them to close on the property. So if one decided that they didn't or couldn't financially do it, then the other had the opportunity to buy the other half. In relationship to Mr. Simon's comments, those are conditions that, again, we don't know that legally can be put in the ordinance. So the ordinance itself is just a vacation tool, not an actual city ordinance to talk about property maintenance. So our property maintenance code is established for the bare basics, bare minimum. There's always a question as to what standard that sets and so on, but there are your options. You can, again, vote the ordinance down whereby this doesn't get vacated and it sits exactly the way that it has. You can vote this forward. My suggestion, if you do, obviously, then you do it conditionally, giving them a rough time frame to close on the property.
So, just to clarify, who's the Does Mr. Devens legally own the property yet, or is it still the estate of his mom?
It's the estate.
Okay. All right.
He is the executor, so he
Okay.
is legally able to speak on behalf of
Okay.
the estate.
All right, I just, thank you for that clarification. Okay.
Well, based on history, I would say to continue, because, I mean, if you're not maintaining, if you're not even getting the snow out during the winter, whether your sister lived there or whoever lived there, you pay somebody to move the snow and at least upkeep it so that people can walk by it and everything, so based on history, I would say we continue with this, because I know, based on their property, and they keep it up and everything, and it wasn't meant to access the back of their house, it wasn't put there to access the back of the house. I mean, there's lots of houses that don't have any access to the back of their houses unless they drive across their property. So, just because you got an open area there, doesn't mean that that's your way to get back there, so.
I do need to forewarn you though, because there's only 3 of you here tonight, that all 3 of you would have to vote in
Right.
favor of, otherwise it fails. So you can also vote to table as well. That would be your third option.
As far as access to the rear of the property, if we're talking about parking, what are the parking restrictions or limitations alongside? I'm not familiar off the top of my head. I mean, I guess my real question is there parking in front of the house available?
This, Summit Avenue, just much like Third Street and Second Street around the college, is a resident permit parking only
Okay.
area, so it's actually restricted to the residents of that street.
Okay.
They can get permits through.
But there is an option, it isn't like 10 where there's no parking at all. That makes
Correct.
sense. Okay, I got you. Thanks.
Yeah, I was under the impression that nobody could park there, so that's even.
Yeah, the question I think that Mr. Evans brought up is, you know, the garage question, but there is, again, there's no guarantee that the alley would, or they would pay to upgrade the alley in a way to use or build a garage back there as well. I will say this, it has no use for us as a city. If there are landowners that are willing to purchase the property, maintain the property, pay taxes on the property, if we don't have any need for an easement through there, we've checked with Alliant, they have no gas or electric, we have no sewer or water. It is just space right now. We obviously can't force people to buy, or we would probably vacate the entire stretch. We have talked about an alley policy. One was brought forward. We talked about expanding it. We can do that again. But again, alleys are extremely hit and miss. We don't pick up garbage from them. We don't fight fires from them. The only times that we access alleys at this point really are if we have utilities.
I agree with Eric's point that he made earlier, but I also want to hear Mr. Devon's comments about that he has intent to improve it. I would be kind of open to seeing that, giving him that opportunity, but that'd be a short window, a short window of a month or two. I don't want to extend it forever. It's got to be a very quick process there, and that is where we'll see, real intent or just discussion.
I would probably recommend to you that a minimum of 6 months be given if it's in an estate, just because it will take some time to get through legal paperwork for him to make the purchase, would be my understanding.
And also, what kind of gets to me is they extended out to him several months, it sounds like. They've been, and just all of a sudden on the third reading, oh wow, I got something to go on here, I want it sold. So, I mean, if he had gotten with them right away, this could have all been worked out easily, but like I said, right at the very end, bam, I don't want this sold, I got stuff, now it's in my hands, I'm gonna upkeep it and all this stuff. Actions speak louder than words, and the actions show that he hasn't done anything. And I don't go for that. I had a neighbor across the street from me, and then their house finally sold, and it was in total disarray. And now the people in there are just upkeeping it real nice, so.
Yeah. we
So,
want-
you know, we all run into that, and
Yeah.
people don't change their stripes, and I really think this should just continue on.
Well, I guess I would lean towards Tom's, this, you know, I mean, to the point of this being a historic neighborhood, this hasn't changed in 100 years. So I don't know that giving 6 more months is gonna really be
You feel
is
it's
gonna make a
suitable?
huge difference.
I don't know if Tom
Well,
has that same.
Well-
Eric's comment about,
Right.
you know, there've been several months that have already,
No, and I don't disagree with that, and I'll be honest, I had the same exact thought. This isn't, you know, we've been
It's not new.
moving down this road in this process for a while.
Yeah.
And-
6 months, actually. We started this in June,
Mhm.
and it was brought to us by the Historical Commission
Yeah.
as an option to the city administrator, not to us directly. We got it after he heard about it. So 6 months already, we're into this.
Right.
So as Chris mentioned, there's basically three choices: approve, decline, or wait until our
Or
next
we table it.
meeting where we have full council. So obviously, I don't have a vote, so it's up to you three gentlemen in terms of what you recommend. This is where you get paid the big bucks for, is make a tough decisions, so.
Well, I guess
don't know what
if,
Deb and
you know,
staff are thinking.
I'm certainly no attorney, I've never tried to purchase a house through an estate, so I have no clue as to what that entails, so I would defer to Chris's timeframe on that. And I guess if we're, I guess I would prefer to give the option for.
Again, there's no legal requirement that says you have to split, but past practice has shown that you have. So the dangerous precedents you lean away from, and I understand what you're saying, and I understand what Mr. Simon is saying, but the question in front of you is whether or not to vacate and sell, not necessarily who to vacate and sell. It typically goes half and half. So, I'm not an attorney, but I can tell you that having dealt with this kind of paperwork, getting through an estate, especially, you're not talking minor amounts of money. It's $2.45 a square foot plus $3.50 for our attorney's fees. So it's not going to be a cheap purchase as well, necessarily. But that is completely up to you. I think if it's ever challenged and you offer, you know, Mr. Devens to buy it within that 6 months, then it probably
Reflects
negates some
better.
of the arguments, you know, against not giving an opportunity to buy their portion. But again, 6 months is something that I recommended. It's not, again, it's not a law.
No, and, yeah, I mean, I guess and the point is well taken, that this didn't start yesterday, I understand that. But I guess the flip side of that coin to me is, it's been this way for a long time, so giving a little bit of time for the adjacent property owners to have an opportunity. If it doesn't pan out, then in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, I'm more than happy to be done with it, and there we are.
You can go 3 months and
See what progress has been made.
I'd be fine with that.
But when you state there was a precedence, was there ever a precedence stated in the case of an estate? You know, you said previous precedence was set. What previous precedence said an estate was involved? See, you got, when you look at precedents, you gotta look at the facts. And were any of these an estate type deal here? Because if not, then you got an exception you can do here. Because now, like I said, you're getting into 3, 6 months. You know, it's funny, people could say, well, 3 months, 6 months isn't very long. You know, it is 2. It is 2. Because come the spring, that's the perfect time to start upkeeping your property. Well, now you can't do anything because it's sitting there for another 3 months. So by the time it all pans out, you're into June, July, there you are, you're halfway through the year, and now you can do something if it settles out. But
actually going to the 3 months to 6 months is going the other direction. So typically what happens if Mr. Devens would have stepped forward and said he wanted his half, then the recommendation would have been we split it between the two property owners and they each pay for their half. Regardless of timeframes, we have alleys that still haven't been transferred to the property owner simply because they haven't purchased them yet. They're still vacated. They're just not, they're still under the city's ownership.
But they can't be
used as a right of way.
kept though by the adjacent homeowner though.
No, I'm just saying, when you're talking about precedence, you're actually going the other direction by putting a time frame on it, because, like I said, if this were not Mr. Devens and the Sutherlands, if this was two property owners and they both came in and said, I want my half and they want their half, then what happens is we vacate, we agree to sell, then it's their responsibility to give us the money. If they don't give us the money, that stays in city's ownership.
It's not official anymore.
Yeah, until somebody does step forward and buy it. So my point is if even by putting the 3 months on there, you are telling them that, you know, you have 3 months to
It's
kind
more
of
of a
decide
clock
whether or
than-
not you really want to purchase it.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, all Mr. Devens would have to do is say, I want my half. And past precedents, regardless if it's an estate or not, past precedents is offer it to both adjoining property owners. What typically happens for us though, is the one that went through the process to get it vacated will buy. The one that said they wanted it will drag their feet. They can drag their feet in perpetuity, because there is nothing that necessarily requires them
We
to
can't force
buy
them
it
to
in
buy
any
it.
certain time frame.
Right. So really what we're talking about here is potentially agreeing to vacate with a time frame, saying that if a decision isn't made by X date, then the adjacent, then the
Then
southern
Sutherland would have the
would
opportunity
have
to
the
buy the
option
other
to buy
18.
both sides,
Yeah.
both ends. Okay. I mean, in my mind, that is the nicest down the middle of the road option.
But aren't you talking more legal preparation? See, let's say if they buy half of it, and then he doesn't, then they got the other half, so now you're having to do it twice.
Well,
We wouldn't
They
charge
wouldn't
the
do anything
350
until,
twice.
yeah, yeah. you just
If the
do it as one
Sutherlands
person.
came back and bought, we would not charge them the three. So, right now what happens is, they both get charged $3.50 plus $2.45 per square foot of what they're purchasing. If after 3 months, the other half isn't, they're still going to pay the $2.45 per square foot, they wouldn't charge the $3.50 on top.
And there's nothing, to your point earlier, there's nothing saying that if we pass this with the stipulation tonight, that tomorrow the Sutherlands have to come in and buy their half, and then wait for 3 months, or whatever time frame we put on. They can just wait and say, let's see what happens. And 3 months and 1 day, then walk in and buy both.
They
I
could,
mean, okay, right, I mean, I'm just saying, it's not like there has to be two separate purchases.
no, it's still, our attorney will still have to, it's a quit claim deed, so it's not a warranty deed by any means, it's the cheapest version of getting rid of property that we can do. The ground is not surveyed, you know, it's just a written legal description. So,
Do the Sutherland have a time frame and when they plan to purchase it?
We wanted to purchase it 6 months ago,
I mean-
when we heard this was
I mean, if we do a quick print, they could go out tomorrow and start it and have it purchased within the next couple of weeks if they wanted to. I mean, what's,
We want the council to be satisfied and happy,
right?
but we do want a time frame
Yes.
on this. This could go on
Right.
indefinitely,
And I
and,
don't think any of us
and
want that, no.
we're not of the age where we can do that. I'm sorry to admit, but it's absolutely true.
We still buy green bananas. But
But maybe not as green as a few years
That's
ago.
right.
Halfway
typically,
green.
in this scenario, we will have them, if we can get a hold of the property owner, we will have them in writing say that they don't want their half. Is usually how we would prevent it from being split. If we can show that we made an effort to contact and we got zero communication back by the time that this went all the way through the process, again, we would offer it to the one property owner because we can show we didn't get any feedback. I can't speak to Mount Vernon past 3 years ago. I can speak to my 18 years. Again, most communities will give it half and half because it's the easiest thing to do. Any condition that you put kind of beyond that is really up to the city, but moving forward, every time we do this, we set a precedence unless there's some unusual circumstance here that there's not, that would prevent us from kind of following this route moving forward. So the safest play, again, this is just my recommendation because you pay me to keep you out of court. The safest play is to offer half, give them 3 months to claim their half, and if they don't, then the other property owner is welcome to buy it.
There you go.
But the smaller ones can buy their half at any time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then within 3 months, if it's not responded, if there's nothing, then they can buy the other half. All right, sounds good to me. And we'll put it in March, the perfect time to clean it up.
Chris, there's something you want to say, I can tell by your.
No, I just, when you make your motion now, you need to be specific that that condition become part of this, because it's not in the written ordinance right now. The condition is, we would vacate, we would sell to the adjoining property owners, each getting 50%. They have 3 months in which to close from the date. It's from the date the ordinance gets put in the paper, so it's not tonight. It would be 3 months from the date that the ordinance becomes legal, because once it's in the paper, then it's a legal ordinance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
3 months and probably a week.
Can I just add one more point, just to close off what it was that I was trying to state in my argument, okay? And Paul, I really invite, we should be talking to each other to solve this so that you don't have to work on solving the other thing. But just as a point, you mentioned, sir, that you have had this happen with a neighbor. I've seen this, and I've lived in this town since 1985. And here's what happens to a neighborhood. When one neighbor stops maintaining a home, when they let their property degrade, it affects the entire neighborhood. It devalues the tax base. It's a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed in ordinance. You have a condition to that ordinance. It's a condition. All I'm suggesting is part of that condition be to make sure that whoever is going to be purchasing in any of these situations, and I totally understand your detailing of what this is about. I'm just saying that it's a larger issue that needs to be addressed by the council with the ordinance. We can't have homes abandoned and not being maintained. It hurts the neighborhood and it hurts the community. And that's the only point I wanted to make. And thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, so you guys,
I appreciate Mr. Simon's comments, but I think we need to work on the agenda item as it is.
Yeah, right.
The focus that it is. And as much as I kind of question the 3 months, I'm going to make a motion, and you can second it or not. Put the 3 parts, to vacate and sell to the adjoining landowner, to put the 3 months, and that 3 months is plenty long, I think. I mean, if you're serious about intent, you can do construction during the winter. But that's point 2, is the 3 months. Then the third point, recognizing the legal date when it gets printed in the paper. And it's just awkward to legislate neighbors to get along with each other. And that's
That is difficult.
the best compromise I can come up with. And you may agree with it or not agree with it. So that's my motion.
And does that work?
Did I cover all points? Yeah.
Okay, and then I would second that.
any comments?
I think kicking it down the road, waiting for the other 2 council members, just keeps the calendar running another one.
Especially since we're not meeting until that.
Right, exactly. So that's why I don't want to,
Yeah.
I want to face it now and not,
Take action.
Yep, agreed.
Roll call, please, Sue.
Weezer,
yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Rodovich.
Yes.
All right. Thank you to everyone in the audience. I know this isn't an easy topic, but I think this is a fair outcome.
Thank you.
All right. With that said, we'll move on to resolutions for approval. Resolution 1217, Plan A, approving authorized signatures and authorizing. Kristen, was it the 13?
Yeah, this is your routine. The only difference is the mayor pro tem is listed.
Yeah, okay,
We were going to list the mayor pro tem last year, but Marty had indicated already that he was stepping down and we weren't sure when, so we just left it off. It works out well for us because whoever issues the check actually doesn't, it's either Marcia or Sue, isn't allowed to sign. So having, four people right now, obviously with Tom being that trust, it's beneficial.
I would move approval of resolution 12-17-2018.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please, Sue.
Rose,
Yes.
Weisler,
Yes.
Rautenbush.
Yes.
Next item, resolution 12-17-2018B, providing for stop sign locations within the city of Mount Vernon, Iowa.
Just kind of in preparation of the new developments, these are not in the new developments, but they are leading to the new developments, so Public Works, Police Department have all taken a look at these locations and have indicated that these are the best places for stop sign locations. Our ordinance requires you to adopt them by resolution, so.
And just a question, Doug, when we, and maybe Nick, I don't know, but when we put in new stop signs like this, is there any warning, I mean, I know, I drive through, I've lived in my neighborhood for a decade. I know exactly where they all are, and the one on Fifth that wasn't there when I was a kid still catches me. So, and that's 20 years. Right, I know. And there's a couple of times where I'm like, son of, yeah, so I'm just, my point being, you know what I'm saying.
Generally, when we put in new stop signs, we give a 30-day warning period. We'll do
Okay.
enforcement, if we see violations, we'll stop them, contact them, there's a stop sign there now. But we don't write tickets for 30 days on those.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, gives you a little window.
And we appreciate it. All right.
We are running a little funds.
Right?
So that's
Any other questions? Otherwise,
See the rapids.
yeah.
I'm going on vacation when that council meeting happens.
Well done. In that spirit, I would move resolution 12-17-2018B.
I'll second it.
Comments? No comments, roll call, please, Sue.
Rautenbush.
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Weisler.
Yes.
All right, next item, motion for approval, consideration of claims list. You should have a copy in front of you. Entertain a motion once someone is ready.
I would make such a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and consideration of filing the Mount Vernon annexation policy. Chris?
There is no life or death situation with this. One of the goals obviously was an annexation plan. We morphed that into more of a kind of policy / information memo explaining our stance currently on annexation. As I've stated, I'm not a proponent of annexing property without a reason to do so. There's a lot of caveats that go along with annexing property. And it's got to be right, I feel like, for both parties involved. So you have a 4-page policy / memo with some recommendations. It doesn't have to be voted on tonight, knowing that some of you weren't able to download this file. You can table it till the next meeting. Basically, you're just making a motion to file this as kind of the established policy moving forward. So when we're working on the comp plan and they ask us, do we have an annexation policy, this is the standing policy until such time as you change it. But
And just out of curiosity, how would we, thinking of future councils, if they decide to take a different stance? How do you?
it's a simple motion.
Okay, all right.
Somebody rewrites this and
Then they adopt it, there you are. Okay, gotcha.
So again, up to you three if you want to approve or,
Since there's no real hurry, I guess, and I would table it until
I want to make sure that you have ample opportunity to ask questions. There are alternatives that we'll discuss in it. There are my reasonings behind obviously not pushing to annex. I do know when I first came to Mount Vernon, there was a big push to start annexing
That was,
property.
Yeah.
And of course, I asked to put the brakes on that, and some of that is detailed in this memo. So, if you guys want more
Once
time.
we start, we have a window of time, right? Once you hit the go
When
button.
we can, yeah.
Well, it's somewhat explained in here, it depends on how you annex. So voluntary annexation gives you a little bit more play with that window of time. Involuntary annexation gives you 3 years.
Yeah. You're too smart.
So, the other thing that I state, obviously more than once in here, is there's no financial incentive necessarily for the city to annex. What typically prompts annexation is a shared border like we have, and everybody is land grabbing to prevent the other suburb from surrounding them. So if you look at, if you're a nerd like me and you look at the maps of Des Moines, for instance, or Cedar Rapids, you'll see these kind of amoeba-shaped cities, and that's why. They keep trying to grab property. Now, we could do a moratorium, and what would be easier for us is for the cities of Lisbon and Mount Vernon to sit down and talk about what's called an annexation moratorium, whereas we draw a line and agree for the next 10 years not to annex beyond that line. That ends the pressure. We both legally agree the City Development Board will not approve an annexation in violation of that agreement. We file it with the state. So of everything that we need to do, that would be one. The second would be when the bypass plan comes through, is that we work with Lynn County on that 2-mile fringe area agreement. Lynn County is a fairly astute kind of planning department. They're very much interested in land use. That's not necessarily the case in all Iowa counties. So we don't necessarily have to worry about a large subdivision popping up on the south side of Mount Vernon. If we did, then we would probably fight that.
And they've been in on those meetings the whole time.
Yes,
that's-
so
This would not be a surprise to them.
again, there's no need whatsoever, other than I wanted to try and get your list done before the end of 2018.
No, this was very helpful, I appreciate that.
So with that said, is the wish to table?
That's it.
I'm fine with the full majority.
Eric, any?
Yep.
Okay. Next item, discussion and consideration of paving extension for Stonebrook 6th edition.
Obviously, it's gotten cold faster, and staff actually concurs with this. They're gonna hold off paving until the spring. Staff can't internally offer the extension. It has to take a formal vote by the council to give them until April to get their paving done. But having the base sit over the winter actually is good for us.
Is there a dog in this fight that the longer the developer takes to put in the streets, the longer it takes to build houses, the longer it takes to get income, get taxes based off of those houses?
No, usually the longer it takes them to put in the streets, there's more risk associated with partial improvements being in, and the developer was bankrupt, having to walk away from the property. If it stems a lot from the housing bubble. You saw big companies like Regency have massive subdivisions half completed, and the cities were then left with half infrastructure with no way to necessarily cover the cost.
Right.
In this instance, we're talking about one phase that, at the end of the day, I think somebody could probably step forward and take on. And even if the city had to put that one leg in, we would be able to get our money back if need be. But that's the risk associated with
Yeah.
16 houses, right?
first phase.
With that said, entertain a motion.
I will make a motion to provide extension to paving until next spring. Potentially April 2019, I guess.
Go ahead, Eric.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, reports. Move the 3 jabber boxes in the back. Chief, anything you want to highlight to the council?
There's a few accidents,
Just a few at the roundabout?
a few at the roundabout. That's all I got, unless you got questions.
Yeah, I noticed there was quite the crowd there.
Deputy, the collision center there is really having quite a day. Jeepers, I should have invested.
Anybody have any questions for the chief? All right, public works report. Nick, you're up, sir.
Evening, Mayor and Council. I actually don't have anything on the report, extra stuff. I think when the hometown team Smithsonian thing came to town, they did an auction. Am I correct, Scott? I don't know.
Let's say yes.
Okay, I think they did an auction. Then on that, I saw where the fire department was offering like tours of the fire department for an auction or something. One of the things I think Public Works trying to help give back or do something on like some city event or city function, even like the wellness center, maybe we could have raised money with, I'm not sure if there'd be any interest. I know my 8-year-old would have a ton of interest
That's
in
exactly
maybe
what we're
riding
doing.
along in the plows.
Mhm.
So I think the police department has some kind of form they fill out if they have ride-alongs, but maybe in the future having something like that for Public Works to be able to offer. And both newer council members are gone. I'm gonna say, I don't know if we're gonna do tours again, but anyone's more than welcome to come see any city facilities that they would prefer to see. And the ride-alongs could be offered to any of the council members as well, if you want to kind of see how our guys are dealing with fighting the snow and kind of the difficulties we do face, nighttime, anytime. So just kind of offering all that out there.
Okay, with having them step out, maybe shoot them an email or reach out to them individually and share your invite.
I can do
That
that.
we don't wait till the 7th or forget, so to speak.
Yep. Was there any questions on that?
Anybody have any questions?
You'll have details about how much use of sand and brine and so on. But for middle of December, are we in good shape? I know there's a lot of winter left, but,
We're in great shape.
Great
With
shape.
the temperatures, the brine has been awesome, it's been perfect. When our temperatures get closer to that 15-degree mark, the brine's not as effective. We still like to put it down as kind of some kind of, it breaks any adhesion with the ice to the, it gives us something underneath to start the process once our salt starts hitting the top. So we still do put it down sometimes in those conditions, but if it gets under 15, you probably won't see us pre-treating the roads. We're working internally, trying to get the bigger dump trucks the ability to pre-treat the salt as it hits the spinner, and that with brine, so that activates the salt as it hits the street. So just little things that we're still trying to
But
work on.
we're not ahead of usage, as far as usage.
No, we're,
I'm not sweating.
I don't
if
wanna-
that makes you
Yeah,
feel
okay.
better.
I don't want to curse anything.
Yeah, of course. But as of right now, we're all right.
It's been very warm in December.
We're ahead.
And Mr. Gondek would be really pleased with that whole brine salt thing.
Yeah.
7th grade science is really kicking in there.
I had to learn something in
Right, you gotta do
the
something there, so.
We did, we are monitoring it. If anybody gets the Gazette on a regular basis, they'll see that Cedar Rapids has been experimenting with beet juice.
Yeah, I saw that.
Beet juice?
Beet juice. It's sticky, so that when they go and put salt down and then you see as it scatters across, they're trying to prevent that from happening as much, so.
How does that work if you get beet juice on your car?
Believe it or not, Canada had been doing it long before it had been in the United States, is my understanding, so.
I know that West Branch, a smaller community, is using that. They just pre-treat their whole stockpile of salt, so it's kind of already has beet juice on it.
Interesting.
And actually pre-treating the salt also with just brine helps the scatter effect. So if you can keep, it's like 30% more on the road, so it starts saving costs
Yeah.
little by little. Now, I know most of the residents hate the brine, but it's still salt, it's just
Yeah.
salt, so we're putting it out there regardless.
Well, what about your kids running out there getting beet juice all over their shoes and running into your house? What's covering that?
Yeah. I can't help it.
So the only solutions you got for us?
Who's sledding
I
though?
don't know.
Yeah,
It sounds like trouble to me.
You gotta carry those kids to the
Let's
sledding.
keep the beet jokes out of here.
I would encourage, and I know it sounds kind of crazy to either get up in the early hours of the morning or stay up late at night to get into a plow truck, but until you're actually in one, feel how they maneuver, see how difficult it is to plow around vehicles, feel what it's like when a plow hits a curb. And the age-old one is to see how fast, I chalk this up to my 16-year-old driver. My wife will follow behind us and they're like, she swears she's speeding, and I'm sitting there looking at the speedometer going, no, she's not. It's the same thing in a plow truck. We get that a lot. They went flying down our street. Well, we have ways to monitor that, and we do. As of late, all my friends send me the Facebook footage of Alaska, where they have a road grader that has a little attachment that comes down and they keep all the driveways open. Well, if we had the need outside of maybe 5 times a year to spend $250,000 to $300,000 on a road grader that we would use 5 to 6 times a year, it would make a lot of sense for us, but it doesn't. I mean, the dump trucks we use year-round, so I just always find and wanted to make sure you had the opportunity to know that by all means, if you want to step inside and sit with them for a night. What is absolutely was mind-blowing for me anyway is to go out in a blizzard, and when you're driving your vehicle, knowing that you shouldn't be out on the roads, and your first inkling is to get home because you can't see. Those guys are out in there because they have to be there, and it's not any better, even though you're elevated and in a dump truck.
Yeah.
So you're the guy we're yelling at?
No, it's a 16-year-old.
Okay.
That's,
So,
With his wife chasing.
but everything. Spend a day with Matt. Spend a day with our officers. I think everybody's inkling is that Mount Vernon is small and not much happens. I think if you read the reports on a monthly basis, you'll see that that's not true. It helps you have a conversation with the constituents when they say, whatever they read or hear on the internet. No, that's not the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, man.
Next item, Mount Vernon Parks and Rec report. Matthew, anything for the council or anything you want to highlight?
Nothing to add. Nick stole my thunder.
We were gonna talk about the beet juice?
Yep. Beet juice on the chlorine box.
It's either that or the algae thing we do, so yeah, whatever.
Algae.
Anybody have anything for Matthew?
Thank you.
All right. Next item, budget CIP. Chris, nothing really further with this, right?
No, not unless you had questions. It'll be on there until March 15th.
All right, I assume nobody has anything new. All right, move on to reports. One thing I have in terms of mayor report is just, obviously, we will not be back together before the holidays, so happy holidays, travel safe for everyone. Get out there and support our local stores for your last minute holiday shopping. Anything from council committee? Anybody? Chris?
Just the closings, Monday, December 24th and Tuesday, December 25th will be closed for the Christmas holiday, Tuesday, January 1st.
2019.
2019, not 2018. For New Year's holiday, we will have a staff luncheon. You're all welcome to attend. This is an appreciation luncheon. The city buys the meat, they smoke it, and it's a potluck, so you're welcome to attend if you'd like.
Will that be at City Hall?
City Hall down here.
What day is it?
Thursday.
This Thursday.
This Thursday, yep, from 12 to 1:30. And then, I'm really excited about this Nixle program. The more that we learn about it, our capabilities, the ability to send text messages. some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, because they don't want all those messages, but you have the ability to adjust, say stop, do whatever you'd like, but not only the weather events, but field closures, things of that nature. I think it's just gonna be one more tool, kind of in our arsenal to keep everybody informed.
Communication.
The other thing in there is just for your benefit, it's a PowerPoint that was provided to me by Lynn County. There are changes to voting. Cities and schools have always voted at different times, and I think there was a push
Yeah.
to combine them. For the most part, it looks like it would be good for us. It might not be as good for the school. The costs are shared, and it just depends on what route they decide to go. I would encourage you to look at the PowerPoint. They didn't give us a whole lot of time to review or send comments in, but
Is there a logical option to pick, and one third, or do we care?
there's only one that I didn't care for, and that was the one that required the cities to go up. The rest of them are
Yeah, we
costs
have
went
to
down.
We already paid 50%, right? Or-
Doesn't always equate to 50%, but yeah, we pay a percentage.
Okay,
It feels like it.
okay,
Just depends on what's on the ballot.
okay.
Anything else? Rick, good?
No, like I said, if you have anything specific, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to the contact information on the letter.
All right, no further business, meeting stands adjourned.